Now that the season's over, it's time to review each team to see what kind of production we got from them. Today, we're breaking down the White Sox on today's action packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, we are your number one source for fantasy baseball knowledge, and thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Matthew Ane, the guy scratching his head on camera. You can find me on Twitter, X, or whatever you want to call it, at Matthew_Ane. If you're watching on YouTube, please click the bell below to subscribe to the channel and give you notification every time we drop a new episode. Also, please leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple or Spotify, wherever you may listen. And if you want a little bit more than what we offer in this 30-minute podcast, check us out on the Subtext. Become a member of the Diamond Club, where you'll get all our rankings and all that wonderful stuff that we have to offer this offseason, now that we're in the offseason, which is absolutely wild. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONMLB to win $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, guys, this is a wild one. I can't believe, for starters, it's been a great season. Thank you for everybody hanging out with us. It's just an honor to have all you guys listening and participating and hanging out with us all year in and year out. It's absolutely awesome. Season 2 of Locked On Fantasy Baseball for Dom and I is wrapped up, and it's crazy. So I'm going to give you a little bit of housekeeping. I'll be saying it all week. So will Dom. This is a Tuesday episode. So if you watched yesterday's episode, we'll also put it out there. But so here's how it's going to go for like the next month and a half. We're going to do team reviews, and Dom and I are pretty much going to do one episode a week together, and then divvy it up, do 2 dolo each. So you're not going to be getting a lot of us together until probably, mid off season, when we go down to 3 days a week and then ramping back up all the way back up to the season. So, just to kind of give each other a little bit of a break and things like that, since it's a long season. So now let's get past the housekeeping stuff. Let's start talking about the worst team in baseball, and that's the Chicago White Sox. I'm a little blown away. This is the craziest thing I've ever seen. They went 40-121, which, after that last loss of the season, they have now become the worst losing record in modern day baseball since 1901. They have now officially been slotted in as the record holders for most losses in a single season of modern baseball. That must hurt. That must hurt a lot. And it's not like football, where you're guaranteed to get like the best player in the draft. Well, there's actually a nice draft class this year, so maybe there'll be a quick resurgence. Who knows? But I'm not holding my breath. The White Sox are going to White Sox. And what I want to do is we're going to review this team. We're going to talk about, what they did, preseason, what they did midseason. We're going to talk about how certain players perform that were actually fantasy relevant. And then we're going to look at their future and what it holds, and we'll kind of just go in from there. This was a very depressing season. They started off the season with trading Dylan Cease. Dylan Cease was like their ace in the hole, essentially. Dylan Cease got traded for Drew Thorpe and others. Ended up going over to the Padres, which was, great for him. He's had a fantastic season. He pitched 189 innings pitched. He had 124 strikeouts. He had an ERA of 3.47 and a whip of 106. Like, fantastic season. Way to go. You're on a so much better team. You're in a better park to pitch in. Congratulations to Dylan Cease. And he didn't have to get the stain of this 40-121 season. Oh, and, honestly, when it came to after they got rid of him, I'm like, okay, cool. They made a move to go younger. I wonder who they're going to sell. There was a lot of rumors, right? Like, Eloy's going to get traded, which he got traded. Are they going to trade Luis Robert? That would be their highest price item, where they can get a whole bunch of young dudes for him, because he's young as hell. And, who else are they going to let go? Are they going to trade Andrew Vaughn? Are they going to trade Crochet? Like, all these wonderful things that just, probably, if you're going to lose and have this kind of record, you might as well just like rip the team apart and, cash in on everybody. But no, they didn't do that. They did end up trading Eloy to the Baltimore Orioles. Um, they really didn't get too much of a craziness. And, you know, let's look at what he did since getting traded to the Orioles. I don't think it was anything wild, but at least he's on a good team. He's had about 95 at bats during the regular season with them. He's posted about 7 runs, 5 doubles, a bomb, 7 ribs, batted 232. Just not a good season. I mean, overall, too, like you look at his numbers on the season, it just wasn't an impressive season. A guy that I honestly know has power in him. Only had 6 home runs on the season. Obviously dealt with some injuries this year, but Eloy has been a true disappointment overall for not only fantasy matters, but for whatever franchise he's been a part of. Because the dude was top end fantasy prospect. Like, you know, I think what 1 or 2 at the time when he was getting the call. I was so excited for him. I thought he was going to be a beast. But it turns out he's just a flop. He's been hanging out with Alberto Mondesi and Byron Buxton, and you know, just loves to get hurt. Like, man, like, let's lay off the candy bars. Let's get some stuff straight and whatnot. But no, just couldn't pan out because the tandem of him and Roberts would have been fantastic. But it just didn't come to fruition. Eloy Jimenez is now on a different team, and fantasy's value there. But I mean, I don't even know where this dude's gonna play next year. It's gonna be interesting how it breaks down for him. But now let's start getting into like the current players, right? Let's start talking about Luis Robert. Luis Robert obviously did not get traded. I really thought he was going to go to the Phils or even the Dodgers or the Spankies or any major market team, right? I even would have liked to see him go to like, Kansas City Royals. That would have been a great landing spot for him too. But unfortunately, he didn't. And to boot, he also missed about like 2 months this year with a hip injury. I believe that's what put him down. And it sucked. We drafted him as a top 10 outfielder. And it's like, okay, what do we do? We're now out with like our second round or third round pick and our number one outfield. And, it's not like when he came back, he was anything special either. He had 388 at bats. He had 46 runs. He had 19 doubles, 14 home runs, 35 ribs, 22 stolen bases. And he batted a wonderful 224. It was just ugly. Now, look, the home run numbers are nice, and the stolen base pace actually is a lot better. You look at it, and he had 20 stolen bases through 546 at bats last year. He had 22 through 388. Like that was a nice bonus. Sorry for my kids screaming in the back, but you know, Luis Robert was on a better pace for that, and for even the home run numbers. If you really look at it, too, the home run numbers were pretty much on pace, if not a little bit down, which you can understand. But the ribbies are now going to be completely lackluster if they don't put somebody on this team with him. It's just not going to be as pretty. His value is going to come down. I love Luis Robert. I'm still going to draft him. We're going to get a discount double check on him come draft season because of who he is, and because of the team around him. Now there's going to be no real ribby, opportunity, no run opportunity that's really going to be able to drive him in besides Andrew Vaughn. Truthfully, you know, I'd like to see some of these guys get the call, but these prospects aren't instant hitters. You know what I'm saying? So to leave Luis Robert on this team is just a crime. Let's put it that way. The guy is pretty much stuck, I believe. And you kind of just go, okay, what is this kid's future? He's going to be there for at least the next 2 years. I have his contract pulled up, and he's definitely locked in for 2027. He's allowed to go to arbitration, but then for 26 and 27, there's club options. They're going to have to pay him 20 million a year for that, but you know they want to keep butts in the seats. That's their only enticing moment. Otherwise, it's going to be a really ugly franchise for a couple of years. But that might be what they have to do. This is the perfect opportunity to sell him next year. If they don't move him next year, oh man, it's just going to suck for him. It's going to suck for his production. I'm still going to draft him, like I said, but it's going to be weird. He's probably going to be more like a top 20 outfielder, if not top 25, versus the top 10, top 15. Suppose he would be if he was on any other team. It's just really sad overall for the player. I'm just not really thrilled about it, honestly. Let's hope that they kind of deal him, preseason, and we can have a fantastic run with Luis Robert, not have to wait all the way till you know trade deadline in July for him to hopefully get moved at this point. Like I don't know what to say at this point. We're just gonna have to figure that one out. But guys, coming up next, we're gonna go over Andrew Vaughn, Miguel Vargas, Garrett Crochet, what their outlooks are for the rest of the season and for next season, and all that wonderful stuff coming up next. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code Locked On MLB and get $50 instantly when you play $5. Exploring my skills on Prize Picks this season adds an extra layer of excitement to daily fantasy sports. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 really fast. Prize Picks is incredibly user friendly. I can make my selections and submit my entries in less than 60 seconds. And as the host of Locked On Fantasy Baseball, I might as well give you some picks to get you started off with so you can get that $50 and also roll into the more. Opt for Corbin Burns to have higher than 7.5 strikeouts in his next start. Opt for Alec Boehm to have higher than zero point 0.5 total hits in his next outing. And opt for Aaron Judge to have higher than zero point 0.5 home runs in his next game. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code Locked On MLB and get $50 instantly when you play $5. Again, use the code Locked On MLB on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Are you watching Fox Sports and ESPN on your TV all day? Have you had to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or free on the Amazon Fire TV channel app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Introducing the Locked On Fantasy Baseball Podcast Diamond Club on Subtext, your ultimate fantasy baseball companion. As this offseason unfolds, rely on our dynamic content. Get our waiver wire, I mean, not our waiver wire rankings. Get our, redraft rankings, dynasty rankings, prospect rankings, essentially. I keep saying rookie. I got football on the brain and so much more. You'll be able to ask us questions, all this wonderful stuff you can get in this interactive package. We're going to be here all off season long, getting you ready for your drafts. And it starts today. New members get a free 2 weeks. The link's in the description below. Check us out. All right. Like I promised before the break, we got another guy up here, and it's Mr. Andrew Vaughn. Andrew Vaughn. If you're not familiar with him, obviously he's on the Chicago White Sox. Plays first base and outfield. And he had like a mid-season, you know. It is what it is. 565 at bats, 55 runs, 30 doubles, a triple, 19 home runs, 70 ribs, 2 stolen bases, batted 246, had an OBP of 298, a slug of 404, and an OPS of 702. So, like, it's a mid-season. Like, it's like whatever, right? Like, I'm not really impressed. You didn't own him all season. He was a good streaming candidate when he was hot. He was perfect. We recommended him so much this season, just based off of the fact that, like, when he's going, there's multi home run weeks, massive RBI numbers and run numbers, and he's batting like 500 through that week. He's fantastic when he gets hot, but he's super streaky. He's not a consistent player, and I don't think the high end upside that everybody was expecting out of Andrew Vaughn is actually there. That's just my opinion. It's an unpopular opinion, but like I could never see it for me. Like you just look at the kid's career essentially, and you just go, okay, like he's 26 years old, and he's been in the league since 2021 when he got the call at 23, and he's had a bunch of full seasons, 417 at bats, 510 at bats, 566, 565, right? And it's like, okay, his career high was last year, 21 home runs. Career high in ribbies was last year, and ribs at 80. Like runs, never really impressive. Batting average was a career high of 271. He's a career average of 253. Like it's just never been like elite numbers. And I'm just like, okay, dude, like, you know, is it all going to come to fruition? I think it would have already happened. You're 26 years old. You got a lot of experience. You're a vet at this point in the bigs. It's just not there, So like, I think we need to like dial back our expectation on Andrew Vaughn. He's a great streaming candidate, end of the bench, deep league. 15 man. He's perfect for that. Like your middle in your, I mean, yeah, no, not your middle infield, your corner infield position, perfect spot for him. But like, you know, leagues where you don't have corner and middle infields, and or 3, 4 UTs, which God, that's a lot. Andrew Vaughn is not a starting first baseman. He's a great streaming candidate at that point, or a good bench player for off days. But I would never, ever, ever feel comfortable leaving the draft with him as my first baseman. That is just not something I want to do. It's just not kosher. I mean, like I look at it like this: if you did, you either are loaded at all other positions or you have no idea what you're doing. And it is what it is. Andrew Vaughn for me, I think is fantasy irrelevant for a draft and essentially just a great streaming candidate. And I'm talking in circles. So I am going to move on. Hold on one second. I want to just take a sip. I'm recording on Sunday morning at 9 o'clock in the morning after a night out. So with me. I need my coffee. We're going to move on. We're going to talk about Miguel Vargas now on the Chicago White Sox, formerly on the Dodgers, funny enough. I don't remember how he got there. I'm obviously probably a trade. I don't have it in front of me, but it's not really relevant. I actually really liked this kid as a prospect. I thought he was going to be fantastic when he finally got the call, but Dodgers dodged him, and on top of that, he really just hasn't lived up to any of the hype that I truly thought he had. Like, season stats haven't been great. 203 at bats, and this is between being on the Dodgers and Chicago White Sox, predominantly on the White Sox. 203 at bats, 21 runs, 7 doubles, 5 bombs, 16 ribs, 3 stolen bases, batted 153. Got worried and he was hitting 239 on the Dodgers, but I mean, he played 71 at bats and he was with the team for like half the season. And then so he was getting like platooned. And then you had Chicago White Sox, and he was batting 106 when he was getting everyday play essentially because he had 132 at bats since July. It's pretty decent. Um, it's just not great. Now there's upside still. There's still some things like he has the pedigree to be like prospect pedigree that was there, right? You look at, let's go back to like the first full season. 2022, right? 438 at bats. He had 100 runs in that time, 32 doubles, 4 triples, 17 home runs, 82 ribs, 16 stolen bases, 71 walks to 76 strikeouts, batted 304, and an OBP of 404, a slug of 511, and an OPS of 915. And even the year before, he had 23 home runs and 483 at bats. Like he does have the prospect pedigree. He was very successful in the minors. He really didn't hit under 300 for those four consecutive years he was in the minors, and that was age 18 to 22. And then you know, in 23 when he was down in the minors, because he obviously didn't make the roster, he was hitting 288 before he got the call, and he had 10 home runs through 236 at bats. So like the kid does have prospect pedigree. It's just it hasn't come together since he's been in the bigs. So like the bat is intriguing. Everything about him intrigues me. He may be my guilty pleasure uh, for fantasy baseball essentially because you know I love the prospect pedigree this whole time, and I'm just like, oh, as if it hits, it's going to be interesting. But like, nothing supports the case even for this year. Like you go and you like we're looking at his baseball savant page right now, right? And his X WOB is like a 259. His X batting average is 177. The X slug is like a 294. Average exit velocity is 86.1 miles an hour. He's battling up about 4.7% of the time. Hard hit percentage is atrocious at 26.8% of the time. The launch angle percentage is 28.9% of the time. Like it is ugly. Even his bat speed is 69th percentile. It's ugly. Like I am not happy with him. He's the only thing he's not doing is chasing and whiffing, and he's walking. Like whatever, bro. Like I expect a hell of a lot more. Like he never really like the second he gets the call up, it's nothing special. And maybe it's because of the inconsistencies and all the head stuff that's been going on, but getting Dodgers essentially, like it's not fun being a prospect on the Dodgers because like you're a cog in the wheel, and it is what it is. So for Miguel Vargas, I'm hoping that this is a fresh start. Now, we're not drafting him like high at all, which that's common sense. I don't really need to say that out loud, but maybe if you're new, I just want to state that out there. But what I will say is this: he is going to be a great scratcher at the end of the draft next year. I'm going to scratch that lottery ticket, and I'm going to note through the first 2 weeks of baseball what I'm doing. I'm probably even the first week. If he comes out and cranks it, or he also might rise up draft boards just a smidge if he's having a really good spring because of the prospect pedigree. There is still truthers. People still do like him, so we wouldn't be alone on this in this conversation. But he won't rise too far. So he's going to be a lottery ticket that we're going to want a piece of, I think, come draft season. That's going to be an interesting one. So Miguel Vargas is just somebody to keep in the back of the dome so we don't forget about him. But coming up next, I got Garrett Crochet. The whole drama of, was he going to be traded? Is he going to be traded, etc. We got Drew Thorpe, an interesting name, a guy that started off on the Yankees in the preseason, and went to San Diego and now on the White Sox. Sorry, dude. Um, you know, all that coming up next. All right. We are talking about our friends over at FanDuel. When you have a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play by play, and so much more on the same page where you place all your bets at fanduel.com. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's fanduel.com. And guys, you know what? Let's look at it this way. I'm betting against Daniel Jones every step of the way. You know, yes, he looked a little bit better on Thursday night, but I don't think that's going to be consistent. And if Malik Neighbors is out for a couple weeks, just pick the under on everything. Pick the lowest, total passing yards, rushing yards. The only thing I'd probably go a little bit higher on. Under on the touchdowns, everything under the sun for the Giants. And honestly, if they decide to do like over under on total field goals for the Giants, I'm rolling that out there too. It's going to be the over because apparently we just can't throw or running touchdowns. So guys, bet against the Giants all day long. And that's fanduel.com. Bet $5, get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed on your first one. Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes you getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals and on great seats so don't even have to waste your time searching through thousands of other tickets. With Game Time Picks, curation makes it easier for you to save more on sports, concert, comedy, theater, etc. Game Time has preliminary well, sorry, a plethora of great features of as well as such their all-in-one pricing. Toggling through this feature shows the total upfront cost with no surprise fees at checkout. Seat view, right? So you get a great panoramic view of your seat before you buy it. So make sure there's no pull right there, so you can see every play or see somebody perform, right? Lowest price guaranteed or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference, which is absolutely sweet. Game Time's ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On MLB to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code Locked On MLB, LOCKEDON MLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time, baby. All right, and we are back, and I am excited. All right, we're at the latter half of this, and I want to talk about Garrett Crochet. It's funny. So I actually, and I'm going to be honest here, did not see this coming. If we're being straight, you know, he always had an interesting kind of repertoire. Like Crochet was kind of like, okay, dude, like, what do you got for me? And he really showed out this year. Um, you know, Great season line stat line, right? 146 innings, 209 strikeouts, a 358 ERA, a whip of 106, fantastic stat line. And, a stat I like to throw out there, right, is FIP. He had a FIP of 269. FIP is like kind of like a ERA indicator, right? So, like, essentially, what would you do with an average defense behind you? And obviously, he did not have an average defense behind him. He barely even had a team. They pulled Joe Schmoes off the street and said, "Hey, you live in Chicago? All right, cool. You're going to play for the team." That's essentially what happened this year. And you look at it, and he would have had a whole run difference in his ERA. That's bananas. He really did have a great season, but the only difference is Crochet really did not have you know, a season where he went higher than 54 innings pitched until this year. He pitched 146 and his career high is 54. So he was on an innings limit, and he was getting close to this around, around All-Star break, right? So that's the issue. You know, they wanted to trade him essentially and maximize the value, but the thing is, when teams were talking about putting him out of the bullpen, he flat out said, "Yo, I'm not doing it." He said, you're going to pay me first. You're going to extend my contract, and then I will come out of the bullpen. Otherwise, I'm not doing it. And as a player, I can understand why. Like, yo, I'm really successful. As a starter. Why would I want to go into the bullpen and go to a relief role for a year? And I also have nothing guaranteed. So, the way I dictate how I get paid is how am I performing out there, and I'm having an incredible season. Why wouldn't I want to do that? So I get it from his standpoint, but like from another team standpoint, that's not attractive. Like, what if he gets hurt? Is his career high? What if like TJ and I just extended him? Like, there's both sides of the coins on that. But like, so Garrett Crochet ended up staying, and you know what? Good for them. I think he'll still get moved at some point, especially if they aren't able to bring in talent and be successful in the off-season acquisitions. And maybe they'll get some value and he'll end up going. But I think next year he's going to be a top 20 arm. I mean, I haven't done my rankings yet, so like I have to see what's going on. But man, he's got talent. I love this kid, truthfully. Like everything about him, screams, "Hey, I can really be somebody special in this league." You know, yes, it's a career year, but the beautiful part is, he's 25. Pitchers don't really mature till like late 20s and 30, and that's usually their prime because it's more of a chess game up there on that mound than it is anything else. So good for him. And he has everything that you want out of a pitcher, right? He has one, two, three, four, five, six pitches, a four seam fastball, a cutter, a sweeper, changeup, sinker, slider. Like all those things are fantastic. Now, he threw the four seam fastball about 53% of the time, and then the cutter about 28% of the time. Then kind of mix in those other ones at like 9% with the sweeper, change up with like 5.9%. So, like, one thing I would like to see is him kind of, diversify his profile. Or when I say that, essentially his pitch mix. Like, I would like to see him kind of bring down the fastball usage, and throw a little bit more of the sweeper to kind of change it up a little bit more, be a little bit more deceptive. But like the put away results were fantastic. 25% with that four seam, 29% with that cutter, and that sweeper 28%, even though he only threw that about 10% of the time. Now, if he can move that sweeper into a little bit more of his arsenal and even throw the changeup to really give that off speed pace, man, he could be filthy. So like I want to see some off seams in moves of like, changing of the pitch mix, and also hear him working on those pitches a little bit better to get more movement and everything else. And this kid could truly be something special. So, best way to look at him is he could be the next Cole Reagans. Like, I mean, he and then some. So let's see. I mean, it may be a bullish take. I might get a little, hate on the feed, but I'm a little bullish on him. I've really come around on him. So, at one point during the season, I was like, yo, there's no way this is sustainable. And then boom, here we are. So now, you know what? I ate some crow, and I have my foot in my mouth. I'm ready to take it out, and I'm ready to be on the team. So Crochet is going to be somebody we're going to be targeting all off season. Now, I want to get to this last guy. I don't really have time to get into their future, but to be honest, there's nobody really special that we haven't talked about already. And Nolan Schultz is the only guy that really has fantasy relevance, but it's going to be the latter half of next year. So it is what it is. So let's talk about Drew Thorpe, somebody for next year, right? He's somebody like, okay, as long as he's healthy and he's able to do it, I'm kind of all about it, right? Like I want to see what his injury is real quick. So essentially, his injury was a bone spur, and he had to get it shaved down, so it's season ending, unfortunately. But luckily, it's not TJ. Bone spurs are uncomfortable. They obviously mess with your production and things like that. But when they're corrected, we're good. So he's eyeing a spring training return, which is great, and I think he'll step into a good spot. Upon getting called up this year, he was pretty darn good in spots. I won't allow the ERA to dictate, my opinion of him, essentially, right? Because at times he was really good. He had a 5.4 year, 5.48 ERA, and that really isn't indicative of what he truly did. If you really look at it, like when he was good, he was really good, and when he was bad, he was bad. And how much was that of the injury, and how much of that was, you know, him being actually bad at what he's doing. So let's break it down here. So upon getting the call, the first 32 innings, he actually had a 3.58 ERA. Through 6 games that he started, he had in that time he had a strikeout, 19 strikeouts. Now he's not a strikeout guy, he's not a K per nine guy, but he 19 strikeouts through that isn't bad, especially with the ERA production. I'm not mad at that. He could definitely win games, keeps the whip down. I like all that. The second half, he had literally what 3 games started, and I think the injury was kicking in, and which ultimately led him to have a season-ending surgery to then fix the issue, right? So I'm gonna take that second half with a grain of salt, and I just want to talk about like his minor league career a little bit as well, right? Like in the minors, in 2024, before getting the call, he posted a 135 ERA through 60 innings and had 56 strikeouts. He was about four strikeouts below that, below his total innings, which is fantastic. Had .867 WHIP in that time, and then when he was on the Yankees in 2023, obviously, and while he was in the minors through Double A and A plus, he had 139 innings pitched. He had 182 strikeouts. He had a 252 ERA and a .983 WHIP. Fantastic. Now, I don't think we're going to see that, that ERA, I mean, that strikeout to innings pitch ratio. I don't think that's in the realm of possibility, but I'd be really happy even with just like, 1 for 1. And that might be in the realm of possibility in a couple years. The kid does have good stuff, and I'm really excited for the kid's potential. So Drew Thorpe is somebody I'm going to be targeting next year. Just don't know where he's going to be going yet. I have to do my rankings. I also want to see ADP. But guys, thank you so much for being a part of this podcast. Thank you for hanging out with me today. Um, Tomorrow I'm going to be talking Angels, and then Dom's going to finish out the week with, you know, 2 other teams, probably the Rockies and Marlins. So stick around if you have an interest in those teams. But guys, till then, peace out.